Well, good morning. I want to thank our Sonoran Desert players in Loma for our beginning skit. And I also want to thank Rick and Peggy, because they were talking to me this morning, and Rick said, do you know that today is a palindrome? That means that forwards and backwards is the same thing. 02, let me see, I got to do it. 02, 02, 2020. It's the first one in 900 years, and it's the only one in this century. So this is a pretty significant day that we're standing in. I kind of like that. So thank you for letting me know that. We can appreciate it. Well, the month of February does give us the opportunity to talk about the divine law of circulation. And if you haven't opened your pledge trifold, we're starting out by giving you money. And we're asking that you do not save it, that you do not put it in the offering bag, but that you consciously spend it. And I would suggest that maybe when you actually take it and give it for a purchase, to say some kind of an affirmation, like, I now consciously activate my flow of abundance and watch the universe bring it back to me. Something like that. Because we are going to be looking at that divine law and how it works in our lives for the next 4 weeks. I think, as Dawn mentioned, we have the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to use the term 20/20, referring to vision and clarity, with the year 2020 together. So that's what we've put together as our pledge campaign theme and our theme for the month of February. And I've tried to look at different sites. They took television, but I took sites. And so today we're talking about 2020 hindsight. And also with that, understanding backwards and living forward. We're also going to be looking at 2020 foresight and 2020 insight during the coming weeks. Because I think it's nice to know where we begin, know where we came from, so we know where we are. Soren Kierkegaard, who was considered the first existential philosopher, wrote, "We live forward, but we understand backward. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward." And so since this is a month that we're going to be co-creating our future, creating a vision that will carry us forward into the new year, that statement is really meaningful, not only for our center, but for each one of us. And I loved what Louise talked about this morning, because I think to understand backwards, we need to assess what thoughts, beliefs, ideas are floating around in our head, to see if there are things in it that's blocking our flow of good. Is there some place in my head where I'm a victim? Why me? Why don't I have what she's got? Where's life let me down? Who or what do I need to forgive? Housing a resentment is a humongous block to our good. Humongous. So where are anger and resentment keeping me for that joy that automatically flows? And where are those places that I need to forgive myself for past mistakes? One of the things I love about our teaching is that it invites us to take responsibility for our lives. And as Louise said, we often don't even pay any attention to what's in our head. But if you're here for any length of time, you're really invited to take a deep look at it. That's really and truly the crux of our teaching, because it is change your thinking and change your life. So what's in there? What's in there? In past years, we've used the burning bowl, or we've used our vision board week And we looked at those past. We did bring them up and look at those experiences with deeper understanding and recognized any thought patterns that were not in our best interest. And so we symbolically burned them in the burning bowl, or we floated them up and out of sight in a Chinese lantern, so that there was an emotional and tangible release of those ideas, those past memories or experiences that have blocked the flow of our good. As I was preparing this talk, I read I found online that there was a woman who was told by her Native American grandfather to look for 3 explanations for any past negative experience. Now, isn't that a good idea? Because normally, if we're harboring something, it's pretty fixed in our mind. We've got an explanation. This is it. This is it. Come up with 2 more. 2 more. And she says that way our response comes from a place of deeper clarity, less emotional entanglement, and a willingness to let go of former inflexible opinions. And then what happens is that we start to look with our heart, which comes from love, rather than our head, which tends to recycle old conditioning. You know? And I would suggest that in one of those 3 explanations, ask the question, where or what is the gift in this? Because we might not find it immediately, we might not find it at all, but it's certainly healthier to focus on benefits rather than detriments. And often we can be surprised by what my friend Dr. Arthur Chang called those gems in ugly wrappers. Quite a few years ago, I decided to find the gifts in everyone with whom I had an issue. And my relationship with my mom, as most of you know, was shaky. And even years after her death, I was holding on to some resentments. But in looking for the gifts in our relationship, it jumped out at me that one of the biggest gifts she gave me is a value that I treasure the most, and that is my love of nature. She always had a bird book on our side table, and when she and my dad moved to the Ozarks, she would get up at first light, sip her coffee in front of the picture window in the dining room that overlooked the woods all the way to the river. And she was delighted when she saw a doe with her fawn, or a red fox, or a little baby raccoon, which she named Orphan Annie. And from my dad, the fisherman, it was patience and the ability to sit in the silence, which made meditation much easier for me when I started my spiritual studies. My dad, because he went fishing and wouldn't talk, taught me how to meditate. Wow, I never thought about that until I looked for the gift in that relationship. And I did that with my former husbands, and I found gifts in everything. And in finding all of those gifts, the resentments that I was harboring about any one of those people dissipated. And I was able to open up and freely let that flow of divine love and joy into my life. And there's something else that we might consider as we look over our past. And that really is that when we look at it, every moment of our life has brought us to this time, to this place, to these people. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. So many of those past negative experiences have been catalysts for our growth and our deep transformation. And without them, we might not be where we are today. I've told you about my friend, B. Jorgensen, who ran Friendly House, which was a halfway home for alcoholic women, and the Beatitude Detox Center in Los Angeles. Carol Burnett starred in a movie of the week that was about B. And B had been a falling down blackout alcoholic, not a high-functioning one at all. But she said to me one day, Donna, I am so grateful for my alcoholism. There isn't a woman who enters Friendly House whose story isn't mine. I can connect with these women in ways that wouldn't be possible had I not been an alcoholic. In his 2005 commencement speech, Steve Jobs, CEO of Apple Computers and Pixar Animation Studios, talked about how he connected the dots in his own life. A series of events which began with his biological mother giving him up for adoption, leading to his dropping out of college because he realized he was eating up his adoptive parents' life savings, and then hanging around classes that he liked. And that brought him to a calligraphy class and a lifelong love of calligraphy. How could calligraphy courses help with the development of a computer company? I'll let Steve answer. Quote, "None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that course in college, the Mac would never have had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would never have dropped in on this class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do today. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it has made all the difference in my life." You know, Steve Jobs was talking to students just graduating from college, just starting their lives. But his words are as true for us today. If we understand our past and clear those blocks as they become apparent to us, if we connect those dots, those blessings in disguise that brought us here, then we know we can trust the process. We know it. We know that there is something within us that knows what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And if we intuitively follow that message, the good in our life flows unencumbered. And that brings me back to the flow of financial abundance. You know, since we have officially launched our pledge campaign, it's time to talk about money. And I put if you haven't opened your pledge card, don't do it right now, but within it is not only an opportunity to share the wealth, but, as I said, we're starting by giving you $1. And it says here, churches are always asking for money. I deliberately put that on there because I just heard that about our church. And it absolutely surprised me because I don't think we ever ask for money. We do ask for money for classes, or workshops, but that's because we have practitioners and workshop leaders who are charging for their time and their experience and their expertise. We have a love offering basket at our spiritual circle, our open mic, and our men's breakfast. And while the love offering from our men's breakfast is rather generous, we only get a few dollars from open mic or spiritual circles. Certainly not enough to cover what it costs to have that particular event. You know, the lights, the heat, the air conditioning, the snacks. But we do this for love. We don't make money. We lose money on open mic. But that's not going to stop us from doing it. Because it gives us so much. I'm not going to stop the spiritual circles because we're not making money. So I don't see a love offering as an ask for money, and I don't see a pledge campaign as an ask for money, because we have a center that we love that would not be here if you and I didn't think it was important enough to support. The pledge campaign is a time to bring that forward in consciousness. So rather than asking for money, the question becomes, What does my center mean to me? And the pledge campaign is the time when we seriously consider this. What if our center was never born? That's what I asked in December. What if it didn't exist? Rosie told me the beautiful story about driving up, looking in the center and saying, oh my God, what if it didn't exist? And she burst into tears. I would too. I would too. What if I came here and the doors were locked? How would that affect me? How would that affect you? So rather than an ask for money, it's an ask to consciously and meaningfully consider what this center means and how you wish to support it. And if any of us who've been coming for a while, we can connect the dots. Think back about where our consciousness was when we first walked in. Think about it. I can tell you, for me, I'm not the same person. And I know a lot of you are not the same person. Because we have this center, we have this teaching, we have these friends who support us. We have found a way of life here that to me doesn't exist on the outside. So I hope that as you take these pledge cards home and think about it, that you do stop, do take a time to think about where you've been, where you are, what's in your head, and if there's blocks in there that are impeding the flow of good, to begin to make those needed course corrections so that we can move into the future setting our sights with 2020 clarity. And I hope also that we stop to connect the dots that brought us here. And then from that place of introspection, take a moment to just give thanks that we have this home and this teaching, that we have each other, and then allow those thoughts to guide our choices in how we wish to give back. That's my vision for 2020. Thank you. Namaste.